Hey, everybody, before we get into the Season 3 recap, if you need a Season 2 recap or a Season 1 recap, just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner. I got you covered. Season 3 kicks off 1 year after the events of Season 2. In fact, the events of Season 2 and everything that happened with Stormfront are written into the new movie Dawn of the Seven. Some people are doing great, like Huey, who was with Starlight and the two are official. And he continues to work with Victoria Newman at the Federal Bureau of Superhuman Affairs, where he's kind of looked at as a superhero himself because he's known as the guy that took down Stormfront. The A-Train is also doing better because he's back in the 7, although he hasn't raced in over a year and questions are starting to come up about when he will race again. He makes a ton of excuses, but you get the feeling that he's not really interested in racing. Then there's Homelander. He's not doing so great because after a year, he's still answering questions about how he was duped by Stormfront, and he gives the same answer as always. He was a man who fell for the wrong woman. He's been doing a lot of soul-searching, and he's really excited for everybody to meet the, quote, real him. Although the real him is getting really tired of answering that same question. Billy, Kimiko, and Frenchie aren't doing so bad. They're sort of working for the Federal Bureau of Superhuman Affairs, or FBSA for short. He sort of searches out all the scummy superheroes that really should be locked up and in jail. And he's gotten a lead on one that they've been searching for, a superhero named Termite. One of his sources indicated that Termite is having a party that night, and he wants to get the green light from Huey to go in and take this guy down. Huey tells Billy, I'll talk to Victoria. But Billy ends up bullying him into saying, okay, you've got the green light, just don't kill him or murder him or any of that. So that night, Kimiko, Billy, and Frenchie all head up to this penthouse apartment where, yeah, they're partying all right. I mean, they're doing blow. They're drinking, and then they see the person they're after, Termite. Termite's superhero ability is he's able to shrink down and then quickly get back up to normal size. But when he shrinks down, he continues to have normal strength. This dude is just out of control. And at this party, he's really nothing more than a parlor trick. He transforms back up to normal size, and he heads into a bedroom with a guy that he's going to hook up with. After doing a lot of blow, the rando tells Termite, I want you inside me. Now, this isn't just normal sex we're talking about here. Termite climbs into a very sensitive area of this guy's body. Starts walking around, everything's going great, but Coke Nose gets the best of him. He sneezes, and when he does that, he transforms back to normal size. Well, since he was in this guy's body, that guy dies pretty quickly. Frenchie walks in and sees this guy's body just torn up. Frenchie tells him, I saw nothing, I'm going to get out of here, but Termite says, wait. And then he transforms down to little size where Frenchie can't see him, and he starts beating Frenchie up. Luckily for Frenchie, Kimiko and Billy end up showing up and saving him. Trapping little Termite, putting him in a bag of cocaine, and it leads to Termite having an overdose. So that's going to be one less scumbag you'd figure the FBSA has to deal with. When Huey gets into the office in the morning, Victoria asks him how the surveillance went with Termite, and Huey hasn't heard anything from Billy, but he says, I'm sure it's fine. Victoria doesn't think so, though. After a year of having Billy on the books, she's noticed a trend, and that trend is always having to apologize for Billy Butcher's actions. Huey, being Billy's friend, tries to stick up for him. And the way that Victoria looks at it is, Billy Butcher is somebody you absolutely want to go to war with. The problem is, right now they're in peacetime. Huey ends up leaving the meeting with Victoria, and as he's walking through the office, he sees somebody he recognizes. It's a guy from the Dawn of Seven. It's a guy that he saw at the Dawn of Seven premiere who was trying to get Victoria Newman's attention, but he was calling her Nadia. Stewie finds it super odd that this guy showed up in the office, and the guy tells him, I'm not leaving until I talk to Nadia. Huey explains that her name isn't Nadia, but the nervous guy says, we're best friends. She'll remember me. Security escorts him out, but right before he leaves, he says to Huey, tell her it's Tony. She'll know. Later in the day, Huey has to meet back up with Victoria, but he never brings up Tony in the meeting. She tells him that she's heard from Vought, and the bad news is Termite is off the table. Vought closed a huge endorsement with him for Terminex. And after Butcher ended up force-feeding him a bunch of cocaine, Victoria didn't have much leverage in the issue. So Termite is going to the Global Wellness Retreat in Malibu. In return, the FBSA is getting a bunch of C-listers. Now, all of these guys are bad news, but Huey wanted to catch the big fish, and the big fish was Termite, a guy they've been chasing for months. So he's not exactly happy about this, but Victoria tries to pitch it to him anyway. After talking with Victoria, he has to go give the bad news to Billy. And Billy is even more pissed off than Huey, although Huey puts on a face like he's all for this move. He tries to sell it to Billy like, Victoria tried to sell it to him. Billy ends up screaming at him, "Huey, you're working for Vought." Huey yells back, "We're actually winning." And Billy points out locking up a couple of nobodies isn't winning. They get into a pretty big screaming match, and what Huey figures it boils down to is the fact that he left. But Huey doesn't think he's the only one that Billy's pissed at. He figures that Billy's also pissed because Mother's Milk left as well. He also knows that Billy is going through a lot after Becca died, but he also thinks that Billy needs to get over it. And it's hard to try to get over it when Billy still has Ryan to think about. Since his mother's death, Ryan is living with Grace, and he's protected by a bunch of federal agents. Billy does go to visit him, but Billy also doesn't want to get too attached to Ryan. Now, Ryan's dad, Homelander, would love to see him, but he's not allowed. He's also been on that 12-month PR tour after hooking up with a Nazi. As he's heading to one such interview, he meets up with an old friend, the Deep. And even the Deep is doing better. He wrote a book about leaving the church, which he calls a cult, and the book is a bestseller. He's also married to a woman named Cassandra. His numbers are going back up. Even Malcolm Gladwell wrote about him. But when Homelander sees the Deep, all he can think of is, how did you get the slot on this show before me? And the Deep doesn't really know how to answer that. The intimidation factor is still very real. And it leads to the Deep telling Homelander, I don't know, I'm still just like a nobody compared to you. Homelander then heads to the interview and they ask him the same question that everybody else does. As Homelander is answering that question, Stan Edgar is having a meeting with presidential candidate Bob Singer. Vought has created a dose of temporary V. It'll give anyone who takes it superpowers for 24 hours. And Edgar wants to sell it to the Department of Defense. But Bob Singer realizes that that's going to be a lot of money. Over the course of a month-long operation, we're talking $60 million per soldier. He's not really interested in doing that. But Edgar sort of points out that Vought recently contributed a lot of money to Singer's campaign for presidency. He's kind of running on this platform that he's this cowboy, and there's nothing more cowboy than giving the soldiers of the United States superpowers. While Bob appreciates the contributions and he sort of agrees with the line of thinking, he's already seen that soups in the Army are a disaster. And Edgar kind of sighs and says, you're right. The problem was making the super into heroes. We made them figures to be worshipped. The fame, the movies, it ruined them. He admits to Singer that in 5 years, he wants to be out of the superhero business entirely. He says Vought should be a serious company, a defense and pharmaceutical company, not a daycare for these prima donnas. But the thing is, you won't have to worry about the prima donna nature because your soldiers will only be super, and they'll only be super temporarily. But Singer has another issue. Calling it Compound V is a problem because all people can think of is Nazis. This after Vought had a Nazi selling it. He says to Edgar, this isn't going to fly in Congress. But Edgar points out that he still has a few strings to pull in Congress. After meeting with Singer, Edgar calls a meeting with both Homelander and Starlight. But he never mentions to Homelander initially that he's going to be meeting with the both of them. So when Homelander shows up and he sees Starlight, he's pretty confused. He tries to kick her out of the meeting, but Edgar says, no, I called you both here. And then he tells them that he wants Starlight to be co-captain of the Seven. This is shocking to both Starlight and Homelander, but to Edgar, it makes perfect sense. Starlight's numbers have never been higher. In fact, she's the highest Q rating the Seven has ever seen. Homelander, on the other hand, has been doing damage control for a year and none of it's working. Starlight doesn't really want it, and it seems like she doesn't want it because she knows that Homelander will hate her for it, and Homelander certainly will hate her for it. And then it's Homelander who ends up getting kicked out of that meeting by Stan. Stan Edgar understands the hesitation from Starlight, but he also tells her, Homelander is under control and we both know why. He then pitches her on this idea, saying that she will decide what the Seven do, what causes they support. She's basically going to have full authority to fill the team's empty slots. And that idea is very enticing. And Starlight is already in the works to try to replace at least one member of the Seven. Vought has set her up as a judge on this reality show to find the missing member. But one of the members that has made it all the way to the finals is her old boyfriend. He used to be known as Drummer Boy, and he was in this hit boy band back in the day. Since growing up, though, he has changed his name to Supersonic, and he's looking to get into the Seven. The TV show really highlights the fact that Starlight and Supersonic used to be a thing. But a lot of it is scripted. The truth is, they did used to date, but they were also super religious, and while they lost their virginity to each other, they just appear to be friends now. Don't tell that to Huey. He shows up at one of the tapings and he sees Starlight getting super chummy with Supersonic, and you can tell it just makes him uncomfortable. While he tells Starlight that it's great, they're just super close, Starlight can tell that he's nervous, and she says you have nothing to worry about. They then head to her trailer, and Starlight tells Huey about the big news, the co-captaincy. And this would make Starlight the first female co-captain of any super team. She feels like with this new role, she could be a role model, but she could also do real good. And Huey's worried that Homelander will get so pissed off, he'll just murder her. They end up getting into a little bit of a fight when Huey brings up Supersonic, and it costs Huey a night of adult fun with Starlight. With his night suddenly freed up, Huey heads back to the office, but as he's leaving, he sees Victoria, and he sees that she's being followed by that guy from the office and from the movie premiere. So he decides to tail him. They head to an alley, and it turns out Victoria does know the guy. She tells the guy, who's named Tony, that she no longer goes by Nadia. He tells her that she has a platform, so she should tell everybody what happened to them at Red River. She explains it's not that easy, but Tony continues to beg until finally she says, "All right, I will." But then Tony notices that his nose is bleeding, and he knows that Victoria's doing it. Turns out Tony's a soup, so he pushes her pretty far, and the two end up fighting. Victoria is defending herself, but she ends up killing Tony. All of this is being seen and overheard by Huey, who is hiding behind a dumpster. Victoria has no idea that he's there. And with Tony's dead body just lying in this alley, Huey overhears her pick up the phone, call somebody, and say, "I'm in trouble. I need a team," and then she gives this person the address and heads home. While Huey was finishing up his day, Starlight headed back up to Stan's office and tells him that she accepts. And it doesn't take long for Starlight and Homelander to start doing a photo shoot for the new press release. But all of this, the bad PR for 12 months, having to answer the same question, the fact that he can't see his kid, and now the fact that his captaincy is being ripped from him, has Homelander reaching a boiling point, and he takes it out on the A-Train. While walking through the hallways, he sees the A-Train drinking a milkshake, and he just rips into him, because he's noticed that the A-Train has just been stuffing his face full of carbs. The A-Train tries to act like he needs it for running, but Homelander, along with everybody else, knows that he doesn't run anymore. When the A-Train tries to whisper, "Man, screw you," Homelander ends up grabbing him and bullying the crap out of him. He then stomps up to his penthouse apartment, and he vents to Stormfront, or at least what's left of her. I mean, she's in rough shape. Her body is super burned up, looks like she's missing some of her legs, but that doesn't stop her from helping out her man and, rubbing him off a little bit. While he starts talking about how these people will worship him again one day, she brings up how he's going to lead an army of Aryan brothers, and he stops and says, "Wait, no, we don't need a master race. I am the master race." While Homelander appears to be still in love with Stormfront, he's just so sick of her talking about this master race BS. But that little temper tantrum that he had in the hallway was seen by Queen Maeve. She texts Billy, "We need to meet," because it turns out that Queen Maeve is Billy's source. The first question she asks is, "What the hell happened with Termite? My info was good." And Billy just says, "Don't ask." But she didn't come there for Termite. She brought with her a file about an old superhero named Soldier Boy who died in the 80s. Soldier Boy was the lead of a superhero group called Payback. And before the 7, Payback was the #1 superhero group. The female lead in Payback was named Crimson Countess, who coincidentally was in a relationship with Soldier Boy. And Soldier Boy's sidekick was this guy named Gunpowder. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that Black Noir was in Payback. He then joined the 7. But according to the news, Soldier Boy died. He was trying to stop a nuclear meltdown in Ohio, and he got buried beneath a reactor. Billy always thought it was fishy, and Queen Maeve says, "You're right. If you read the file, he died from something called BCL Red." And Soldier Boy was nearly as strong as Homelander. So whatever this HCL Red stuff is, Queen Maeve wants to get it because she wants to take Homelander down. She tells Billy that if anybody knows what truly happened to Soldier Boy, it's going to be Gunpowder or Crimson Countess. She then digs into her pocket and pulls out the Temp V. She gives it to Billy, and Billy doesn't want to take it. He doesn't have any interest in ever becoming a soup. But Maeve knows he's going to need it because Payback, while they might be a bunch of D-bags, they're really powerful. And if Billy's going to go up against them, he's going to need to be a soup. Maeve then heads out the door, and Billy is looking at the Temp V, but he sees somebody standing on his balcony, and it's Homelander. No idea if Homelander heard what Queen Maeve was talking about, But he showed up because he wants to know where Ryan is, and Billy's not about to give the location. They then start insulting each other back and forth, and Billy finally asks him, dude, what are you doing here? And Homelander is just sick of Vought and the Bureau. He thinks that what they're doing to him, and Billy for that matter, is just treating them like chess pieces. So while he's enemies with Billy, it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And he asks Butcher, what if you and I share a common destiny, sort of a scorched earth, shock and awe? And then in the end, only one of us will be left standing. Billy says that what he wants in the end is for only one of them to be left standing, but he doesn't fully agree to go into business with Homelander. The last person we haven't talked about is Mother's Milk, who, just like Huey, left Billy, and he's turned into a real family man. He heads to his daughter Janine's birthday party, but he is having trouble because his ex, Monique, is now with a new guy, Todd, so he's kind of co-parenting. While Todd seems like a nice guy, Mother's Milk definitely would like to be with Monique. He's really been trying to do a good job of rehabilitating their relationship and his image for her. But even though to them it looks like he left that superhero hunting in the past, after he tucks Janine in, he heads to a closet where he has a bunch of news clippings and information on where to find Soups. And one of the news clippings is about how Soldier Boy was cleared of the wrongdoings and the death of a Queen's family. In fact, most of the clippings have to do with Payback. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.